My name is Sarah Yoshida, and this is my place in Canadian history. My story starts on the island of Kyushu in the south of Japan. My great-great-grandparents had run out of money and wanted to escape the military conscription which was being imposed in Japan. They also hated how Kyushu was overcrowded, and therefore there were limited opportunities. They had heard that many Japanese people were traveling across the Pacific Ocean and landing on the west coast of Canada in British Columbia. They too decided to move to Canada in hope for a fresh start and a better life. They traveled alongside their close family friends, who would ultimately become my other great-great-grandparents. They came to Canada just after the turn of the 20th century, which made them part of what is known as the SY generation, the wave of Japanese immigrants who came to Canada between 1900 and 1907. Once in Canada, my great-great-grandparents moved into a small home in British Columbia, in a community which other Japanese immigrants had also moved into. Many Japanese immigrants worked as fishermen, or farmers, or in pulp mills, but my great-great-grandfathers started a lumbering company together. Along with the lumber company, they also opened a candy store in town. During this time, discrimination ran high against Japanese immigrants. They were denied the right to vote, excluded from professions such as civil services and teaching, and were paid significantly less than their fellow Caucasian counterparts. This was true for my family, but they had no choice but to accept it because they did not have the power or tools to make change. For example, they could not speak English. Because of this, many Japanese Canadians moved back to Japan. However, my family managed to squeak by. Each of my great-great-grandparents had one child each, a boy named Mario, and a girl named Hatsui. They grew up together and eventually, my great-great-grandparents arranged for their marriage. Together, Mario and Hatsui had one son, my grandfather Thomas Imada. Things were looking up for my family. On December 7, 1941, the unthinkable happened. In the midst of World War II, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in the United States of America. Casualties were high and people everywhere were in shock, including the Caucasian people of British Columbia. They feared the Japanese Canadian community because they were enemy aliens which they thought were spies for Japan. As a result, the public in British Columbia displayed extreme hatred towards Japanese Canadians and insisted that the government do what they could to ensure that they were safe. Therefore, the Canadian government invoked the Wartime Measures Act and ordered all Japanese Canadians to internment camps, despite the fact that 75% of them were actually Canadian citizens, including my family. All of their belongings and homes were taken from them and sold at a fraction of their worth. My great-grandfather had a watch collection, which was his irreplaceable prized possession. The government took it away from him and gave him 21 cents in return. This is just one example of the extreme losses my family endured. Unlike the USA, Canada did not keep families together during the internment. Thomas was young, so he stayed with his mother Hatsui in a secluded internment camp in Victoria, while my great-grandfather was sent to work on laying track for the Canadian Pacific Railway, a railway which spreads across Canada. Here my family would remain until the end of World War II. Once the war was over, Japanese Canadians were released from the internment camps but were not allowed to settle on the west coast. They were given the option to either go back to Japan or move east of the Rockies. This is when my great-grandfather decided to move the family to Hamilton, Ontario. Here, Thomas met his wife Sachi at a high school dance, and from there, sparks flew. They got married in October of 1959 and had 5 daughters, Kimberly, Janine, my mother Marion, Andrea, and Sherry. The 5 sisters grew up at a home located in the Scarborough Bluffs. On September 22, 1988, Brian Mulroney, the Prime Minister of Canada at the time, issued what was called redress. He gave a formal apology to Japanese Canadians for the internment which took place during the war and announced that each individual who was affected by the internment would receive individual compensation from the Canadian government. Each of my great-grandparents and grandparents received $21,000 and a letter from Mulroney himself, which stated that what happened to them was wrong and would never happen again in Canada. My family accepted the money, which they felt was owed to them for their losses. In the meantime, my mother Marion went to school to become a social worker. She was working at a placement in Toronto where she met her husband and my father, Glenn Yoshida. They married in 1995 and moved to Markham soon after. Then, I was born on November 11, 1995. I was the first of 3 children, as my first brother Adam was born in 1998, and my second brother Alex was born in 2002. My family is still living in Markham. I am working hard in school, and my aspiration is to one day become a lawyer, which would be a first for my family. My grandparents and parents are proud of me, as I am living proof of how far Japanese Canadians have come since first arriving in Canada in the late 1880s. From my family's first-hand experience of being discriminated against and not respected, instilled in them the importance of treating others with respect. Also, my family fought hard for their place in Canada through their perseverance and understanding of the importance of hard work. From the hardship my family endured through the internment during World War II and their long battle for equality, have come core values which have been passed down through generations to me, which I plan to pass on to my children. Canadian history is a key part of what has made me who I am, and hopefully my story and my family's lessons will live on for generations to come.